Well, hello everybody, welcome. Thank you for tuning on in. My name is Bruce Bradbury. Today's video is going to be very important about business and success mindset. We're going to be following one of the greats, Alex Hormozi, who himself has created businesses and owns and operates businesses that create more than $200 million of revenue per year. I'll put it right here. Yeah, right around here, part one of the video that we watched a few days ago. We're gonna continue where we left off and continue to gain insights from Alex on business and success. So grab our headphones and let's tune in.
And people want to change industries, and I'll give you a little tidbit from Y Combinator. One is they don't take solo founders, as a side note. Now, mind you, they're only interested in billion-dollar companies. So if that's not you, then you could totally be a single founder. But it's just harder to be successful with one person's skills versus three. The second interesting thing that they have many things they select for, but one of them is industry experience. And so if someone says, hey, I want to get into this industry, if you don't have any experience in that industry, and then second to that is personal experience, like you suffered from whatever problem you're trying to solve, then they're not interested. And so you might have 6 years of experience in the mortgage business. I wouldn't recommend getting into weight loss. I would say maybe you take a half pivot so you're in the same industry, because it's so hard to make up those 6 years. This hopefully gives you a more nuanced view to making the right picks, to making the most money. By the way, if you guys like the whiteboard and me drawing on with markers, this is a throwback to what I used to do. I finally got into
Absolutely, I do.
Love these things. But if you like this style, let me know. I love this style, but I just try and do the things that the data suggests that you like the most. I'll do what you guys want so that I can hopefully transfer the skills that I have to you faster. I said earlier that the unknown unknowns are the most expensive thing in business, right? Because you don't know what you don't know. And so I want to give you a quantifiable example. And I remember the first time I heard this, it changed my life. And so it was actually a whiteboard just like this. So you get to, I'm getting goosebumps. You'll have the same experience I did. So a guy was on stage and he gave this whole presentation about learning skills and about how you have to invest in yourself to get better, right? And he called somebody in the audience and he said, ma'am, and as he's saying this, he's doing what I'm doing. He says, ma'am, how much money do you make right now per year? She stood up and she said, $50,000 a year. He's like, okay. So what would be the main reason that you wouldn't want to invest today, right? So he was closing. This was actually a close. But as a side note, I think the reason I like sales so much is because many of the obstacle overcomes that you learn to overcome are actually self-bullshit. And so in a way, like learning how to sell other people, for me, was learning how to sell myself.
Absolutely. As a real estate agent, that was actually very difficult for me to project confidence to whoever I was speaking with when I first started out as a real estate agent. You know, I felt in my mind and I believed, oh, I don't know enough. Oh, I don't have the authority to talk on this. Oh, you know, why should this client, this prospective client, listen to me with what I have to say, because I just started out in real estate. That is a very palpable subject that Alex is speaking on, because selling other people, talking and communicating to other people, the precursor step to that is selling yourself, telling yourself and making yourself believe that, you know, you're worthy, that you can do it.
Because I had so much head trash of like why I couldn't do things, or why I shouldn't start now, or why I had to think about it, or why I needed permission from someone else, or why the universe was stacked against me to be successful. Like, these are all things that I had to learn the arguments against to convince myself to do stuff. And so he asked the lady, he says, okay, so what would make you not want to invest in this? And she says, well, I don't have the money.
He's doing
And he said, well, you probably don't have the money because you've been paying a really expensive bill every single year. And she's like, what do you mean? He's like, well, right now, you've been paying $950,000 a year, not knowing how to make $1 million. He said, this is the cost of your ignorance.
Wow.
This is the debt that you carry for the rest of your life until you learn how to make $1 million.
Wow.
And so,
wow, I never thought about it like that. The opportunity cost of not having higher leverage, of not creating a higher income level for yourself to be able to invest, to be able to partake in these opportunities. If you make $50,000 a year, don't think of it as I've made $50,000 a year. Look at it as I've lost out on $950,000 this year. Very interesting take. My mind is honestly pretty blown right here.
The reason I'm so heavy on learning skills and becoming educated is that right now I'm paying down ignorance debt I'm paying down $950 million a year not knowing how to make $1 billion. It's the debt I'm paying, right? Like we all pay ignorance debt. And so the idea is how quickly can I pay this down so that I can have more cash flow to continue to pay this down faster. Now, strategy, like I said earlier, is about how you allocate limited resources against unlimited options. That's the fancy word of just saying prioritizing, all right? And so right now, you have limited resources. You have time and you have money. Now, you might have more time than money, but either way, you have some limit on what you have. And so for you to move faster, you have to identify, prioritize the thing that you're going to allocate your time and money towards, right? And you want the thing that gets you the most for it. Remember the input-output that we had earlier, the leverage? So you want the thing that gives you the most leverage. Now, one of the tough parts about reality is that the things that you have access to when you have fewer resources are less than the things that you have access to when you have more resources. Like Mr. Panda can go buy a building for $1 billion and flip it for $2 billion in a year or two and make $1 billion because he has more resources than you do. And you can't do that, right? Not right now. But you do have things that could get you there, which is why Charlie Munger talks about how do whatever you can do, beg, borrow, steal, eat ramen, walk with your lunch pail both directions, do whatever you have to do to make your first 100,000. It's because he understands, and mind you, him saying 100,000 is probably like $1 million today, because he knows that once you get that, you can actually get a little bit more leverage in terms you get way more for what you put in because you can't only put your time in because it's so limited in terms of how much you can do, all right?
Wow, it really gives me the impetus to start on that as soon as possible, to really just try to overload on the beginning. I think of it like if I'm day trading with $30,000, yeah, maybe a good 1% day is $300. Okay, good, cool. I made $300 in a day. Now, if I were trading with 10 times that, then a 1% gain on that day trade is 10 times that. That's $3,000 in a day. And pretty quickly, just from 10xing from 300 to 3,000, I put myself in the highest income bracket in America, just by that simple concept of giving yourself more to work with. It's so powerful. That just invigorates and that just excites me to really hustle hard at the beginning. I'm really looking forward to this journey.
So, this is why I talk about investing in the S&P 500 more than the S&P 500. So if you don't know this, it's Standard & Poor's 500 companies on the stock exchange. It's probably like the gold standard index that we track how the US economy is doing. It's really just the stock market in general is doing. All right, and so if you dollar cost average in the S&P 500, you get 9 to 10% a year for life, or at least that's what it's done historically. All right, so the question is, rather than investing in this, we just have to say, can we do anything that gets us more than 10% back?
Right, and that's why I'm day trading. Active investing versus passive investing. You can put your money in passively into the S&P 500, or you can invest that money actively by doing other things. For me, it's day trading because I say to myself, hey, can I make more than 9% per year by day trading? And if the answer is yes, okay, I can make 10% per year. Well, is that extra percent worth working 2 hours per day trading? I don't know. What if I make, 15% per year? Well, is that extra 6% worth me working 2 extra hours in the day trading? So it becomes a, law of, okay, what returns would I expect versus, the amount of work that I'm putting in. So let's get back to Alex. I think he's not going to be talking about day trading. He's going to be talking about investing in yourself. And let me guess, it's going to be investing in education for yourself.
Great, now we can quantify this. And so if I have, let's say $1,000, right? And
Right.
here's the magic of this, is that
Getting that
when
return.
you invest $1,000 in the S&P, you have nothing else that you add to that 1,000. Like you can't juice the 1,000. You buy in at the same valuation that every other investor buys in at. And so I'll tell you one of the magics, I'm gonna open up the curtain here for a second. One of the magic of what we do at acquisition.com is that we pair capital with know-how. And so we can buy a company at a decent valuation and have a big margin of safety because of our skill set. So we know that we can triple or 10x the business when we invest in it, so we don't have to pick amazingly. Like Warren Buffett's a better picker, always will be, than I am, right, at picking businesses. But Warren Buffett doesn't work in the business, right? So that's the advantage. That's my advantage over Warren Buffett right now. Mind you, he has way more advantages over me, right? Made 90 billion on his Apple trade. But this is the game that I'm supposed to play right now, because here's the leverage that I have on him. I have 60 more years of life than he does, right? He's 93, I'm 33.
Alex is 33 years old. I don't know. I feel like he's older. Maybe it's because he talks with such authority. He does even look older. But yeah, because he talks with such authority and he's been able to achieve so much in life. Wow, that's just insane to me that he's 33. You know, one of the top things I would get from people is, hey, you're 23. You're in your 20s. Hey, you're 19. Slow down. You don't need to be focusing on purchasing a house yet. Slow down. You're only 23. And to that I say, I'm 23 years old. I'm probably a quarter of the way through my life. Well, maybe not a quarter, but a fifth of the way through my life. I've got to get moving. I've got to get moving and on that train. You got to shift that paradigm of saying, oh, I'm only in my early 20s. And you got to say, holy shit, I'm in my 20s. I need to get the ball rolling for myself here.
So I have a lot more of these left on my move
Yeah.
Okay? Now, we have our $1,000. We get 10%, meaning at the end of the year, we're at $1,100 roughly. Okay, or let's say you buy a sales training course. They teach you how to sell and you get implementation from that where they review some of your calls so that you can improve. And all of a sudden you take your income from $40,000 a year to $220,000 a year.
Wow.
Okay, well, what does that mean? That means that $1,000, think about this return. All right, in scenario one, you have $1,100. In scenario two, and here's the crazy part, you have an extra $180,000. All right, so compare this to that. But here's the crazy part. This is every year. Because once you have the skill, you only get better from there. And so one of the things my dad used to tell me that when I was growing up was that he was always really big on education, because he came here, $1,000, didn't speak the language, and he learned English. Like, that was a skill he didn't have. Like, we take so many skills for granted. Like, the man he couldn't even speak the language of the country, right? In $1,000, and he was able to take his medical school education and apply it here in the US because he fled during the revolution in Iran. And he said, the one thing that no government can take from you and no wife can steal from you in a divorce, and you can't get sued out of, is your education. They can't take it from you. And he had relatives who were actually really well off, who actually owned the lottery in Iran. So it was a private company, so they made a lot of money. But they were like second and third generation, and they hadn't learned the skills. And so when they fled during the revolution, they could only take what they could carry because all of their assets got seized by the government. And they never were able to go back to what they had because they didn't have the skills. Because the government could take their assets, but they didn't have the education, right? And the guys who were businessmen from Iran, straight to LA, became businessmen in LA and crushed it there too, because they understood the game, right? And so this is why, like, if you think about it from actually an investment perspective, like, education can't go down, it can't be taxed, it can't be taken from you, and only gets better over time.
Wow.
Right? And it compounds unto itself. Because when you learn the next skill, so let's say this is what the lift we got from sales, then you learn lead gen. And then all of a sudden this, because then you 5x the demand on your sales skills, and you just paid down your ignorance debt.
Made $1 million a year.
With 2 investments. And so, like, is that worth it more than putting the money in the S&P? In my opinion, every fucking time. Is going from 40 to 220 realistic? If you're a killer and you're part of Mozi Nation, abso-fucking-lutely. If you do it the way we tell you to do it, which is you look at the top guy on whatever company, whatever team, and you do twice what they do. Because you know why? Because they're gonna be better than you. And so you gotta make it up in inputs. It's like, but Alex, does that mean I'm gonna have to work harder and longer hours? You bet. Welcome to the world. Like, because think about it. If you work the same hours as that guy always has the advantage because he's already better than you. And so if he puts a month in and you put a month in, he's gonna get further ahead than you because he already has skills through which to judge his own performance and improve. And so you have to put way more inputs in to get the same output than that guy. And so that's why Kobe spent 5 summers doing 2 a days when everyone else was doing 1 a day because he knew he had to make up for the guys who were way better than him naturally. And so like, I would
Wow.
like to think everybody in Mozi Nation as mini black mambas from that perspective, is that we're willing to put in twice the work, 3 times the work, 4 times the work, despite the natural talent deficiencies to make up for it. Because on a 5-year or a 10-year or a 25-year timeline, you become unbeatable. Do I think you can get to 220? Hell yeah. But if you were to just look at average, which I don't want you to be, but if you were to look at average, you might make 100 a year or 120 a year. It would still triple what you were making before. And if you don't adjust your living from what you were making at 40, Mr. Smart Cookie, then now you have, even at 120, if this was 120, you have 80K a year extra that you can then invest in more skills to pay down your ignorance debt. A key point here is I said that there was an advantage that I have over Warren Buffett, which is I got money and time / effort, right? If you go spend the money, but you don't put this in, then you lose your advantage. And so it's not just about spending the money, because here's an interesting factoid for you. When you sell someone, you understand that the moment someone buys, they actually feel like they've solved the problem emotionally. And so you can sell that because you learn how to sell. But the reality is that that just gives them the license to begin solving the problem of whatever it is, especially if it's a skill or it's education based. Here's my ask for you guys. One of the beliefs that I think has served me well is that whenever I joined a group or I joined a community, or free or paid or otherwise, I always wanted to become number one. And the way that I thought about that was, and I always wanted to join groups of people who were all ahead of me. Like when I joined that internet group that I was talking about earlier, everybody there was making more money than me. How do I get status in this group? And the way that I did that was like, be good, you know what I mean? Make more money. And so what I did was I talked to every single person in the group, and I had only my small skill set, and I gave it to them for free. And I want to fucking hit on this because I get DMs every day about this. Guy this morning even said it. He said, Alex, I want to make you 100 videos for free if you're willing to employ me. The amount of times that I get this request, whether it's I want to make you this website in exchange for a job. The point of Mozi Nation, the point of everything that I do at acquisition.com that I hope to live by example is that you give first without asking. You're doing it wrong, right? You think, because like, and the guy's like, hey, in the spirit of Mozi Nation, it's like, you're not doing it in the spirit of Mozi Nation, you're doing the spirit of John, all right? You're doing the spirit of you. The way that you do it is that you give, and then you give, and then you give, and then you give, and you keep on giving until that person is like, dude, what can I do for you? And then you make your ask.
This is what I don't like about the whole act your wage movement. This is common in the workplace for people who are making $50,000 a year to say, I make $50,000 a year. I'm not going to do anything more than what this job description on this little piece of paper tells me my job description is. No, that is not what I believe in. I believe that nothing is an entitlement. You're not entitled to anything. You have to go out there and earn it. You have to go out there and provide something of value to someone first, so then you can prove yourself. Then the person you're providing value to is then going to be able to reflect and say, hey, Bruce is a trustworthy guy that can provide me a lot of value. I might as well give him a very high-paying job because he's done so much for me in the past. You know, the whole act your wage movement is counterproductive, because if you're working less and less and less and you're trying to prove, basically you're proving to your employer or you're proving to whoever you're doing business for that you don't go above and beyond, you're setting yourself up for failure in the future, because you're not building the reputation of becoming that dependable person. You're not going to be building and gaining on any skill sets. The whole basis of the presentation that Mozi is giving us is to think towards and plan for the future. The act your wage movement is thinking and planning towards the present. And if you're thinking about the present and not the future, you're going to stay stagnant the rest of your life. And that's just how it is.
Like whenever I get frustrated and I think, like, why do I even bother doing this? Like I think about giving up. I just think this is where most people stop, and this is why they don't win. It transitions into one of my most used sayings to myself. I don't say it a lot out loud, but to myself. It's like, I won't do my best, I'll do what's required. And so right now, what is required for you to win or get a job or get the skill might be better than your best. And so it just means that your best just needs to get better. All right, so you might be riled up and be like, I'm gonna go do this and take over the world and make all the money. So, but you're like, fuck, I gotta pay bills. So how do we take this and then put it into reality? Number one is like, and this is how you transfer any skills in general, by the way, a little sneak peek from the book that's coming out. All right.
I'm really excited for Alex Hormozi's book, $100 Million Leads. $100 Million Offers was a book he wrote in 2021, and putting it all down in paper. I mean, Alex is just a wonderful teacher, so I really enjoy reading from him. And when it's in a book form, right, you can learn from a video like this from Alex, and that is amazing. It's phenomenal learning. But reading from a book, it's just something, it's a different learning method for us humans. And when it's put down on paper, when we see the models down on paper, and we get to, take it at our own pace, that is extremely valuable. I cannot wait for Alex's book. It's going to be legendary.
Coming soon. Is that you have the person who's teaching you documents the skill. That's step one. Step two is that they do it in front of you, so they demonstrate it. And the third piece is duplicate. You do it in front of them. So document, demonstrate, duplicate. Now, I can do this, and I can do this, but you have to do this. I can't duplicate it for you. You have to take the stuff and actually execute on it. And so if you're like, okay, Alex, what does that actually look like in my life? I'm actually a big proponent of having jobs, and I think that's probably taboo nowadays, but yeah, why not get paid to learn shit? And if you're like, well, the place that I work at doesn't teach me anything, then you should absolutely go apply for other jobs. Like, change your conditions, all right? So I'm all about get paid to learn. And as an aside, the reason that keeping your living expenses low is so important is because if, let's say you make $100,000 a year now, and you're like, Alex, I got a pretty good white collar job right now, but I really want to get into this. Then it might mean that you have to go from $100,000 a year to $30,000 a year to learn the skill. Because right now you go from earning to learning. All right, and like I want to tell you, like I walked this walk. So I was a management consultant at a boutique strategy firm in DC. Like I had a top secret clearance. I was 20. Like I did shit that people could brag about. All right, and then I went and became a personal trainer at a gym for $14 an hour. Think about that.
I didn't know that.
I went from a high-rise condo that I owned to renting someone's bedroom for $400 a month in their house. All right, and I went from having Hugo Boss suits to wearing Beast Mode Engaged t-shirts.
Wow.
Right? And showing up at 4 a.m. like ready to teach Nancy how to lose the last 5. You know what I mean? And so like I had to swallow my pride on this because I wanted to get learned. All right? And so you have to be willing to relinquish getting paid for getting learned. All right? Once you get yourself in an environment where you actually have a business that is investing in you, and it doesn't mean that they actually have to write checks, to be clear. Now, if you have a company that's willing to do that, awesome. Level one is you communicate to them, this is the skill that I would like to learn upon working for you. And so you're like, these are the skills that I bring to the table. This is what I would like to learn. Is this a place that I can do that? Any business owner loves clear communication. It's like, if you want to learn that, and if they're a good business owner, they'll be like, let me help you support. Now, if they're like, my job isn't to teach you, wrong place. And I'm gonna be real, a lot of business owners are like that. And so if you're like, well, man, it's not fair. It's like, well, I mean, getting paid to learn is a pretty good deal. It's just that that's not always what happens. And so I would say, switch your conditions. But let's say you finally get into a business that teaches you stuff and you feel like you're getting better, you're moving faster. I would say once you feel like, and this is a big caveat, this is like fucking caveat. Once you have nothing left to learn from the current position, you communicate to them that you feel like your learning is slowed down. And then they may give you another opportunity to learn more. And if they feel like they can't actually teach you internally, they might say, I'll pay $10,000 a year for you to go through these programs or workshops or seminars or whatever, or certifications, so you can continue to level up your skill. A good employer will do that. And if you look at big corporate America, as much as people shit on them, they usually have pretty strong corporate reinvestment programs. Like why? Because they want their human capital to appreciate. And so if you can pay $10,000, because they do the same SME 500 except the SNU 500, right? They invest in you $10,000 and they get a 3 times more valuable person. Like one of the biggest arbitrage opportunities, side note, this is me talking to business owners, that's out there in the marketplace is that you can pay 25% more for an A player versus a B player and you get 5 times the output. So like you think about value arbitrage, like instead of paying 100 a year if that's the market, pay 125 and get 5 times the output. Why would you never make that trade? Once you've done this, Here are the 3 steps that you can transition from getting learned back to getting paid. All right, number 1 is that you live below your means. The less risk you take in your personal life, the more risk you take in your business life. Let's say that I own a business that does $10 million a year in profit, okay? If my living expenses are $800,000 a month, then I'm not leaving much for the business to weather a storm. And let's say that it's all fixed. It's like mortgages and cars and jets and all the other stuff that I do. Well, if there's a hiccup, the business might go under. But if I live on $400,000 a year, then I have $9.6 million every year that I can go on the offensive, and I can take huge swings. I can be like, I want to buy this company even though it's risky, but it might 10x, right? And that offense is what you have to do as an entrepreneur, because you have to take calculated risk, but you don't want to introduce multiple risk if you can control it. And this is controllable risk, okay? So you live below your means so you can stack cash, okay? Level 2 is that you take this cash, and I want to be clear, I'm actually kind of against side hustles as a long-term thing. I'm pro them as a way to transition. Again, this is how I play the game. I'm a maximizer, like I want to win big. And so I think if you follow my stuff that you probably want to win big too. And so if you're doing a side hustle, it's because you want it to eventually become your main hustle, not because you're just looking for side income. I'm just not that guy. There's other guys who will talk about that. It's just not me. All right? And so you stack the cash so you can start your side hustle, and you keep doing this until you have matched your income. So you start your side hustle and you keep doing it until you match your current income. And if you're like, wait a second, for me to match my current income, I'm gonna have to work 40 hours a week in my job and then work another 40 hours a week at this thing. Yup. And the thing is, and this is just one man's caveat, there's gonna be different takes on this. If you're not making more money on 40 hours a week of the new thing, you're still not doing it right. Remember I went from employed to self-employed? You have a level of leverage. So those 40 hours, you have more leverage than the 40 hours that you're working for someone else. And if you're not making more there, then you're like, you still need to keep doing it until you've matched at least matched your income. And then once you've matched the income, I would say sustain it for 6 months. 2 reasons. One is because now you're gonna be making double time. You're gonna be making money on your job, you're gonna be making money on your, so you're gonna be doubling your actual income, which means you might be like 3 or 4xing your savings. And the second is so that you don't just quit on the one good month you had because you sent out 3 clients. Okay, we want to make sure that it's not seasonal. We want to make sure that we can, it's not just normal volatility, because really small businesses, super volatile, right? If you're selling 2 customers a month, if all of a sudden you sell 0, your income goes to 0, right? Unless you retain the people, et cetera, et cetera. And then cut bait, cut the cord, and go out on your own. Spread those wings like a beautiful butterfly. And a lot of people look at this thing, the side hustle, and they're like, but this isn't Facebook. Like, this isn't, sure, it's not. But I think a lot of people put undue pressure on themselves by expecting their next thing to be a $1 trillion company. And the likelihood that it happens, super small. But again, it's like, what are your goals? If your goals are just like get out of poverty, get above the middle class, get into the upper class, like a lot of businesses can get you there. If you want to be a trillionaire, there's only a few. And also what we don't see is the zillions of not Zuckerbergs who put everything into their social media thing and it didn't work. I'm a big fan of service businesses because it costs you nothing to start. It's just your time. You have no overhead in the beginning. Those ones are harder to scale, but you'll usually learn a lot of other skills during that process. Like I learned more from running a gym that allowed me to do gym launch. Like if I hadn't run the gyms, I don't think I would have been able to do gym launch. And so think of whatever this is as the stepping stone. And again, we're still trying to get learned. Like that doesn't change. We're just gonna also get paid as we do it. And that's one of the beautiful things about entrepreneurship is that like once you get past a certain level, you get to get paid to learn more. And I think that's like for me why I love the game so much is that you just keep getting better and get paid to get better. Don't judge yourself on the side hustle, and especially don't listen to other people's judgment on your side hustle. You know how many people, like I was like Vanderbilt, magna cum laude, white collar consultant job, like had a above Harvard, GMAT score, say like, and you wanna become a trainer? Like the amount of people that like I used to compete against, frenemies, whatever you want to call it, they were like, oh great, he's out of the race. You know what I mean? Like he's doing stuff to make himself happy, right? I was younger and I probably had more fucked up shit in my head then than I do now. But like I used to just think about them all the time when I'd be sleeping on the floor and I'd be selling more. I was like, they're not willing to do this. They're not willing to do this. They're not willing to do this. And then you come from behind, right? And you do Kobe and you work twice a day. And while they're working their job and they have their 3 Series BMW and they're going out to dinner and they have the football on the weekends in their fantasy league, and you have none of that, just know that you're doing your 2 days during the summer or your 3 days during the summer. But because your rate of input is so much higher than theirs is, you will catch up and you will surpass them. And that's if you want to compare. And the main reason I don't think you should judge yourself on whatever you do is because, in my opinion, like, I'm married to the game, right? More than anything. Like, I'm gonna keep playing the game because I love the game. And so if you wanna play the game a long time, then it's the game itself that you wanna stick with rather than the vehicle you're in, right? Most entrepreneurs start more than one business over their career. You are above the business. The problem is that people identify so closely, like their identity is their business, but you have to just think about it, and this is me just trying to give you like a, big brother, what do you wanna call it, piece of advice, but like the further you can separate your identity and your self-worth from the worth of the business, the better off you'll be as an entrepreneur. Because you also start to see it as an asset that can be sold, can create value in the asset, you can make hard decisions. Whereas if it's you, you're like, what will people think? It's like, I made a decision about a business that I own. That's okay. Simon Sinek has a great piece on this, but when I learned the difference between infinite and finite games, it really changed my perspective. The infinite frame will always beat the finite frame, and there are finite games within every infinite game. And so you have quarters, you have years, you have goals. These are all finite games that we play in an infinite game. And so when the US invaded Vietnam, we lost. Why did we lose? We lost a war of attrition, which was that they were...
One thing on the infinite versus the finite game. I was talking to a friend recently, and I'm talking about my investing and my day trading, and the friend asks me, oh great, it looks like you have great determination to succeed, so when you get X amount of money, what are you going to do with that amount of money? And I was kind of thrown off by the question because I hadn't really thought about it. I enjoy day trading for the knowledge base, for the gain in the skill set, and for playing the game simply. Simply put, just for playing the game, right? It's not as if I'm trading to one day be able to afford a, Maserati. No, that's not my finite goal. My infinite goal is to develop a skill set and to allow myself to day trade infinitely and play the game. And I know through that journey, the Maseratis, the huge houses, they will come. But it's not as if I'm playing the game simply to attain those objects. If you are playing the game simply to attain those objects, such as the big fancy house, then eventually your determination within the game is going to be diminished because you truly don't have the heart to play the game. I think about it like you've got to put the determination in to just accept playing the game. Look, okay, let's take real estate. The board game, Monopoly. What makes real estate in real life and the board game, Monopoly, fundamentally different? Nothing. Fundamentally, they are the same. Now, I could play Monopoly forever. I could play it day after day after day after day, just playing the game. I don't care about the results. I don't care about what properties I get playing the board game Monopoly. I just find myself enjoying the experience of playing the game, and that's really what it's about, playing that infinite game.
Willing to play the game longer than we were. All right, and so the difference between a finite and infinite game is that a finite game has known players, agreed upon rules, and an outcome, and an end. That's why it's finite. An infinite game has known and unknown players, it has no agreed upon rules, and the point of the game is to keep the game going. And so the problem that most entrepreneurs have is they approach an infinite game with a finite frame. They are the United States trying to invade Vietnam, and you will lose every time because there will be players who are playing with an infinite frame. And so let me give you two more examples of this. If you want to get healthy, right, you don't win at health. There's no end goal to being healthy. You're not like, okay, I'm done working out. I did it. I've achieved it, right? Of course not, right? Same thing with marriage, right? Like the point isn't to get married. The point is to stay married. The point is to stay in the game, to keep the game going. Most of the games worth playing are infinite games, not finite games, which means the point is to just play. And so business, you don't win. The point isn't to finish, because even if you were trying to say finish first, it's like, by what metric? On what time period? Is there anyone who's been the richest man in the world for all time? No, of course not. Which means that anybody who would try to do that is coming from a finite frame. And so, but there have been people who've won the game of business, in my perspective, because they played their whole lives. If you want to be a stronger player and be somebody who can succeed as an entrepreneur, then the day you start playing is the day you win, and the day you stop playing is the day you lose. And so the goal is to find games that you don't want to quit. That's where learning what you are into from executing is the mega win here. So for me, I found out that I actually liked business more than I liked fitness, which is crazy because I loved fitness, getting into fitness. But like the day I started my gym was the day my love for business outpaced my love for fitness. I was like, this is amazing. This is so cool. And so you have to find whatever that thing is. And I'm gonna be clear, like business sucks all the time. But it's just that if you're willing to play, and like there's plenty of times marriage sucks. There's plenty of times you don't want to work out. But it doesn't mean that I'm gonna stop working out. It doesn't mean I'm gonna stop being married. It doesn't mean I'm gonna stop being in business.
I made a little video about that concept actually recently. If you're doing the things that you have to do only when you're inspired, and I'm talking about myself here, if I'm doing the things that I need to do only when I'm inspired, let me repeat myself, then I'm only going to be getting those things done 20, 40% of the time. Now, if I truly want to win at those things, at those objectives that I'm trying to hit, I need to be working 100% of the time, which inherently means that I need to be working sometimes on the things when I don't want to be working on them. And that just takes the discipline and the heart and the commitment to see your goals won in the future.
And so I think if you can unlock that frame that you want to play until the day you die, even if the vehicle changes, even if the players that you're playing with on the court change, then you'll be the guy who stays on the court the longest. You might think, oh, I don't like video editing, or oh, I don't like, dry cleaning, or I don't like mowing lawns, or I don't like washing cars, or whatever it is, right? But the higher up you get in business, the more all businesses are the same, right? You're gonna have marketing, you're gonna have sales, you're gonna have product, you're gonna have customer success or customer support, you're gonna have IT, you're gonna have finance, you're gonna have legal, like all these departments these functions will more or less exist in every business. And so my advice is, like a lot of people quit industries when they really actually just quit a function of a job. And so like they're like, oh, entertainment wasn't for me. It's like, do you know how many jobs there are in entertainment? Like you might love sales sales in entertainment, and you were in the actual like product side, right? Or the production side, or the support side. And so again, remember I said earlier that like if you stay in the same game longer, you'll be likely to get more reps in and you'll do better. Well, then maybe stay in the same industry, but switch roles. Now, in a micro business, like your side hustle, you'll get to taste all the roles and you'll find out the things that you like more. And that's where you can shift some of your attention there, and then you backfill people who are, because you have a little bit of context, good enough to do what you do better. You you document, you demonstrate, you duplicate, they duplicate, and then they run with it, right? And so today, for example, what I do looks very different than what I did 10 years ago. Right? Like what I did 10 years ago was the highest value skill I had then, which was just closing. Like that's all I did. I had consults all day because I got trainers to train for me. I knew how to run the ads, and that didn't take me that long. It took me 2-3 hours a week to run the ads, make them and manage them. The rest of my time was sitting in appointments and closing. And I had somebody else make the phone calls and text for me. So I would just sit there and close because that was the highest value thing I could do at the time. But the thing is that your baseline skill will continue to level up. If I lost everything then, like if I lost everything, I knew that I would sell cars during the day and I would strip at night, right? Once I had that skill. Before I had the skill of sales, I would drive Uber during the day and strip at night because I had the skill of being in shape, right? And so your baseline continues to grow. Like being the best car salesman, you make 400, 500, maybe even $1 million a year at some of the best dealerships. Like if you're an absolute savage, and I would consider myself an absolute savage if I was gonna do that, right? If I lost it all, I'd be there 12 hours a day for sure. And then once I learned how to marketing and sales together, my new minimum was $1 million a year because I knew that I could sit in front of any brick and mortar business and I could get them leads and I could close them. Once you have that, you can make $1 million, $2 million, $3 million. Like I can't go below that because I have skills that are above that.
Talking about all of these building upon skill sets, for me, what I'm thinking about, a little bit of fear that I actually have is the confidence aspect, right? Not only do I not have the skills to make $1 million a year right now, but I don't feel like I have the confidence to make $1 million a year right now. Or at least that is the paradigm shift that needs to occur within my mind to tell myself, hey, I can build the skills, I can create the skills, but I have to build the confidence within myself while I'm doing that. Thank you for that perspective, Alex, because you're building upon your skill sets to create new floors, new minimum income for yourself, right? Say you're building this skill set and now your floor for income is $1 million a year. For me, just starting out in business and thinking, wow, $1 million a year, do I really have the confidence to actually, feel like I'm worthy to make $1 million a year? So it's also that confidence aspect and also that belief aspect. If I'm on the floor at the car dealership selling and I've made 250 so far that year and I'm halfway through the year, can I continue pushing myself through and having that confidence to say, no, I'm not a 250K a year guy, I'm a 500K a year guy, and continue and push through and have that confidence and ability. It sounds a little bit weird, but you've got to get yourself in that place mentally to set yourself up to succeed once you have those skill sets.
Right? You keep learning these skills as you keep doing your business, and you'll start ping-ponging in different directions until you hone in on the things that you're best at. And so I think if you can find that game, make it the meta skill of continuing to learn, then you won't stop. And then at that point, it means you win by default. So we had talked about a lot of stuff, right? But the question is like, what's the next thing you're gonna do? And so I'm just gonna give you the advice that I followed, which is like, what was the first thing I did to get myself out of this $1 million or below $1 million category to the above $1 million category, and then to eventually the 0.4% $10 million category. And it was actually just learning how to sell. Because if you can't sell anything, you can't make money. It's the first part of the equation. Number of sales times. If you have no sales, doesn't matter how good the lifetime value is, if no one buys it, zero. So I have what we call the best sales training on the internet. It's a long keynote that I did that people really dig, and I think you'll hopefully like it and get as much from it as it took me years to consolidate it for you. It's a good bargain on your time to get 10 years of sales training into an hour. So enjoy.
Wow. Alex is an absolute beast. Wasn't that just an amazing lecture that he gave? We talked about leverage, we talked about beliefs, we talked about building skill sets, we talked about the opportunity cost of not creating that income for yourself that you would dream of. Wow, very impactful. Everyone, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed yourselves, and I'll see you in the next one.